Okay, this right here is one of the most insane weapons in Warframe, and apparently nobody seems to know about it. I mean, look at those usage rates. See, what I'm talking about here is the Convectrix, a little Mastery Rank 7 beam gun that absolutely destroys everything. I'm talking literally 1,000 slash procs per second, AoE nuking, and it got even better now in 2026. So, in this Warframe guide, I'm gonna show you the absolute insanity that is the Convectrix with multiple different builds. As always, big shout out to all our generous channel members, and now, let's jump right into it. Okay, first things first, let's talk about how you can get your greedy little Tenno fingers on the Convectrix. And this one is very darn simple. All you need to do is go to your clan's dojo, into the Corpus lab, and bada bing bada boom, there you have the blueprint. Next chapter. No, I mean, seriously, that's all you need to do. But alright, now that you have a Convectrix for yourself, let's talk about how the weapon actually works and what's so special about it. The Convectrix is classified as a shotgun, but don't get it twisted, there is nothing really shotgun-y about this thing. The main fire mode shoots out a beam, but there's a little bit of a quirk to it, in that it's actually two separate beams pointing outward, and as you hold down the trigger, they will converge into one beam in the middle. Wait a second, converge? Convectrix? Oh, I just literally only got that now. But, stupid me aside, the Convectrix also has a secondary fire mode, which works pretty much the opposite way, with the two beams starting in the middle and then continuously sweeping to the left and right to hit a broader area in front of you. If you ask me, I personally really like both of these modes. The main fire, if I see one stronger target that I want to focus down as fast as possible, and then the alt fire with the sweeping beams, that's actually really darn good to clear corridors of smaller type enemies where you don't need all that much focused DPS to take them out. Looking at the stats, what we're dealing with here is a definite status weapon because the Convectrix has a massive 45% base status chance. That is insane and one of the highest base status chance in the entire game, but also the crit performance isn't all too bad. I mean, sure, the 16% base crit chance isn't anything to write home about, but we're having a 2.4 times crit damage multiplier, which is above average. And given the fact that in big 2026, it's pretty easy to get external crit chance buffs, that means the Convectrix does have quite the potential to be a good critter as well. However, we're not finished just yet because the Convectrix has one more little trick up its sleeve. And that is that for the Convectrix, there exists a specific augment called Efficient Beams. What this one does is, it makes it that the Convectrix only consumes ammo when your beams actually hit targets. This means you can just keep the trigger held down constantly without wasting ammo, and that is of course good because you now don't need to wait for the two beams to converge in the middle all the time when you start firing. You just keep it up throughout the entire mission. But on top of that, the real power of this mod lies in the additional plus 150% whopping status chance that it gives you. Remember, with a base of 45%, that is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, you saw the amount of slashes in the intro, right? And as always, if you can leave a quick like for the video, that'll be really nice because it always helps big time with the YouTube algorithm. Cheers so much for your support. But with all that being said, ladies and gentleframes, it is now finally time to come to the meat and potatoes of today's video, the build section. I mean, that's what you're all here for, right? So, what I have for you today are multiple different ways that exploit the capabilities of the Convectrix in different ways. Let's start out with a somewhat basic one. This right here is a primary Crux-based build. The goal of this one is very darn simple. You try to inflict as many slashes as possible and benefit from the bleed damage that it inflicts. I know, slash is by far not as strong anymore as it used to be back in the day, but hey, if you deal 1,000 slashes per second, it kinda sorta doesn't matter, everything is gonna die anyway. So what we do here, first of all in the arcane slot, we go for primary Crux that gives us a massive 300% additional status chance. Remember, our base is 45%, so you can imagine the number here gets very, very big. However, on top of that, we also gain up to plus 60% ammo efficiency, which means in combination with efficient beams right here, we basically don't have to reload this thing anymore at all. Also, a little side note here, in case you don't have the efficient beams augment right here, Primary Crux in general is a good substitute because with the ammo efficiency and all the status chance, it kinda sorta gives you the same thing here, so it doesn't hurt all too much anymore if you were to leave this one here out. Rest of the build is pretty self-explanatory: Galvanized Hell for more multi-shot, Galvanized Savvy for even more status chance, and also for the nice additional damage that, by the way, on the Convectrix works as intended, so it is base damage. Then, because it is a slash build, we go for a faction damage mod and an elementalist. This one, of course, you would swap it out for whatever you personally go up against, and if your faction of choice does not have a faction mod, or you just don't like faction mods in general, this right here is the version for the factionless build, so to speak, where this becomes a flex slot and you can just put in whatever you personally desire. Now, on this build here, I personally decided to mod for crit because the crit performance isn't all too bad. However, if you were, for example, to play a Warframe that has external crit buffs, Harrow would be an example here, then you can leave critical deceleration here out and replace it with anything of your personal choice. Fire rate and punch through, by the way, are great options here. But okay, let's get a bit more memey and talk about the blast build that you saw in the intro. The one that deleted the entire room in just a split second. This right here, I called it the meme build because it is not technically optimal, but it is so crazy with all the status that it applies that it's still a ton of fun to play, and I wanted to showcase it. As I said, this one is a blast focus build, because blast is great on high status chance weapons as it gives you a bit of AoE capability with the 5-meter explosion that it causes. So, naturally, we mod for blast with cold and heat, Galvanized Savvy plus efficient beams for more status chance, Galvanized Hell for the multi-shot, and naturally, because it is a damage over time build, we go for faction damage as well as elementalist. Also here, if you don't like faction damage, just put Roar on your build and you'll be fine. You can then replace this one here with literally anything else. The star of the show here though is Primary Overcharge. This bad boy right here gives us up to 350% more multi-shot. For a weapon with, mind you, 200% status chance, having so much multi-shot, you can imagine how the blasts go absolutely through the roof. I should say though, this one is pretty situational because it only works if you stay above 90% of your maximum energy. So if you wanted to make it a bit more user-friendly in day-to-day scenarios, you could also go and replace this one with Primary Crux, or maybe even Shotgun Vendetta, because this one at maximum level also gives you plus 180% multi-shot, which is much easier to trigger. But, ladies and gentle frames, we're not done for today, because I have another very special and super duper fun synergy for you. This one right here is a Side 09 based build. Also here we go for blast, but with this one we incorporate the new Primary Debilitate. Primary Debilitate makes it that when you have the maximum of 10 procs of a combined element on the enemy, then every subsequent proc of this element will instead inflict one of the 2 base elements that it is comprised of. For example, if we had 10 magnetic on the enemy with this one here, then the 11th magnetic proc would instead inflict cold or electricity on the enemy. The special thing with this one is though that base elements, if they inflict damage over time that get created through Primary Debilitate, those damage over time effects will not double dip with faction damage, they will actually triple dip with faction damage, so the faction damage bonus is applied to the power of 3. However, that's not all. If we combine that with Side 09 and his second ability Resupply, then it gets even better. Resupply gives you elemental ammo that force procs whichever element you chose as a separate damage instance. For example, if we put Blast onto the weapon right now, then we will not only deal the normal damage, but for every hit we will also force proc Blast on the enemy. The special synergy here is that if those separate damage instances trigger a combined status effect like Blast or Magnetic or whatever, and that combined status effect will get split up into its 2 base effects through Primary Debilitate, then it quadruple dips with faction damage, so it gets really darn strong. First of all, we naturally go for Galvanized Savvy, Galvanized Hell, crit chance, crit damage, the same way we did before. Also here, Elementalist mod and faction. What's special here now is, with the combined elements splitting up into their base elements, that means we can deal a whole lot of different status effects. So what I did here is, I modded Magnetic onto the weapon, which will allow me to inflict Magnetic on the enemies, but also through Primary Debilitate will give me Cold and Electricity at the same time. Then with Cyto 9, we can choose another combined element of choice, for example let's say Blast here, which now means we have Cold and Heat as separate elements as well, and in the last slot here I modded Toxin to have another different element. So just to get that straight, our Convectrix will now deal Toxin, Impact, Puncture, Slash, Magnetic, Cold, Electricity, and Heat through the elemental ammo from Cyto 9. That's a whole bunch of elements, and remember all the DOTs through Primary Debilitate will triple or quadruple dip in damage, and Galvanized Savvy with its additional damage bonus will benefit a ton of all the different elements that are on the enemies, making it so that you basically don't need to prime them anymore. And now, check out the other best primary weapons in Warframe right here. Another massive shout out to Niels V, Demon Lord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostlinux Gaming, Turtle Pier, Underkaneo 2, Skylar Bowser, Mihawki, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morazaki, Shadow Lockhart, Han Tares, Patrisator, Boomia1, Mr. Games Plays, Zave, Awendai, Zengen, Quax, Henrik5984, Blue Eagle 98, Hearthwield, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other hopefully in the next one, and until then, have a beautiful weekend.